Hi, Capricorn. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for February of 2020. Well, we've been talking a lot about this cluster of planets in your sign, but also things are going to be moving more into Aquarius and into Pisces this spring, and with the result that some of the emphasis is going to come, the pressure is going to come off of you and identity and instead be more about finances, second house themes, and also third house themes of communication. This month, some particularly intense stuff is going on. Maybe intense is the wrong word, but it's two planets in retrograde. One of them is Mercury, and you've probably heard about that before, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the other one is Juno, an asteroid which has to do with marriage and committed relationship as opposed to love and romance. And Julie is going to tell you all about that and how it will impact your chart. Hey,
All
Julia.
right. Well, Juno is an asteroid, just like Jamie said, and not a lot of people have heard about her, though she's really important in understanding a more holistic and integrative level of what your relationship needs are, because she just represents what your long-term partnership needs are versus Venus, which represents what your falling in love needs are like and how you express affection to your partner. And Venus is going to be going into your fourth house of family and home on February 7th. And wherever we have Venus is where we find pleasure in our chart. So you may be enjoying spending more time at home, cuddling up with your boo, than going out for a night in the town, for example. It's also a really great transit for decorating your home, too. Now, Juno, that asteroid I just introduced, is going retrograde this month, the month of Valentine's Day. And any planet that goes retrograde is asking us to review the themes in which it represents. So she's going retrograde in your 10th house of career. It's also the house of our social standing to the outside world and the greater community at large. So you might be reviewing how your long-term partner is supporting you at work, for example. And you may also be thinking about how the public views your partnership and whether your partner makes you a true power couple in some way in society at large, for example. Now, both of these planets are going to oppose each other on February 25th. So there could be some tension in your relationship with whether they satisfy your image at work or your public reputation, and whether they also satisfy your sense of them being a part of your family as a domestic partner. I also want to talk about Mars this month, and it starts off in the beginning of the month in your 12th house of seclusion. So you may not feel like asserting yourself the way you usually do during this transit, and you may be much more tempted to act behind other people's backs to sort of get what you want. But be careful that this doesn't misfire, because this is also known as the house of self-undoing too. Then Mars is going to enter your first house of self on February 16th. And that means that during that time, you're going to be really embodying Mars energy. So that could make you seem like a much more formidable opponent to other people. And you also might have a lot more energy, too, during this time. So it's best to take it out in exercise or in a sport instead of blowing up at someone, too.
Yeah, that should really light a spark under the Capricorns of the world, don't you think?
Oh, for sure. And what's going on with the lunations this month, Jamie?
Yeah, there's going to be a full moon in Leo on February 8th. So let's take a look at that. Here's the moon in Leo in your 8th house, Capricorn, and it's opposite the sun in Aquarius in your 2nd house. And this is an axis that has to do with resources. The 2nd house is like my stuff. The 8th house is our stuff, the stuff that we share. And this full moon is going to be very connected with that Juno retrograde stuff that Julia was talking about, because the sun will be trining Juno and the moon will be sextiling it. And so in and amongst all of the relationship retrospection that you find yourself doing this month while Juno is retrograde, some of it is bound to be caught up with themes of what's mine, what's ours, what's yours, where do we draw the lines between these things, is it a fair and equal distribution of resources, how do we communicate about those resources. it's a lot, right? It's a lot all at once. You might want to check out the video that we made about Juno retrograde. I think I may have mentioned that before. It's found in the February 2020 news playlist. And it says a lot more about Juno retrograde. And yeah, so you may find some ideas there that you don't find here about this. And so as the month progresses, Mercury moves into Pisces, and then it begins to slow down and turns retrograde in Pisces right about here, right at the middle of the month. And let's see, yeah, that's on the 16th. And then shortly after that, the Sun joins Mercury in Pisces right here. So there's this motion of planets, moving through that second house and into the third house for you, which is the house of communication. It's a house of thinking, of ideas, sharing ideas, putting things into words. And I unfortunately have to tell you that Mercury doesn't like being in Pisces. And it also, I think you probably already know, doesn't really like being retrograde. But it does really like being in the third house, as it is for you. So it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Mercury in the third house is probably going to make you feel like you really want to communicate, like you want to initiate some communications, like you really want to do the research that you need to do and formulate the words that you need to formulate. It's very good for your voice to have Mercury moving through your third house. When Mercury is moving backwards and it's retrograde, there's going to be more of a retrospective feel. So if Mercury retrograde is always a great time for cleaning up old communications, literally for cleaning out closets and for fixing up the past. And because Mercury is in Pisces, this might be a more confusing process than usual. So being clearer than usual and bringing a very big dose of compassion to those conversations is really what's called for. Now, there is a new moon coming towards the end of the month, and that's happening on the 23rd. Right here it is in Pisces with that Mercury in your third house. And when the moon gets involved, it brings up emotions. A new moon is a time for fresh beginnings, for the planting of seeds. And so this is a great opportunity to use communication to plant seeds to make your relationships better in the future. And that, I think, is the $1,000,000 statement of this particular horoscope. Now, if you were thinking about what sorts of readings might support you this month in and amongst all the things that are going on, obviously a relationship reading is never a bad idea around Valentine's Day, and that's absolutely true. I think it's even more true when there's so much activity in the house of communication, which is a very, very relational theme. On the other hand, you might want a reading that has more to do with financial issues because of the activity in the second house and the eighth house, and all of those themes about resources in their relationship. So really, I would say just a plain old natal and transit reading, which can hit on any theme at all, and where you're free to ask whatever questions, and range into whatever areas work for you right now. That would probably be the best choice. Well, Capricorn, I hope you've enjoyed this horoscope we made for you with love. And you can find more horoscopes like this one on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology, on our website also at pandoraastrology.com/horoscope. And until next month, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye.